Hi students, in this video we are going to see the uniqueness of the cardiac muscle. The uniqueness that we are going to talk about are how the cardiac muscles can contract by itself, and also how the cardiac muscles can get the nutrients and the oxygen. The first uniqueness is called myogenic, which means that the cardiac muscle has an ability to beat on its own without being stimulated by a nerve. So on this slide, you can see that these are the collections of heart muscle cells that are being cultured in a petri dish or a media. So you can see that without any nerve cells, they by nature, the heart cells are beating on its own. So they're called myogenic. In contrast, on the other hand, your skeletal muscle needs to be stimulated by nerve cells in order to contract. So, for example, on this slide, you can see the illustration that if you want to have your fingers or part of your body, the muscle to contract or to move, it means that your brain, the nerves in your brain needs to send a signal to the muscles, and then the muscles will react by contracting itself. However, the contractions of those cells needs to be synchronized. So it cannot be just like the speed become so random, but it has to be synchronized. You have learned that the atria has to contract first before later on continued by the contraction of the ventricle. So that's why the heart muscle cells need a conductor to lead the contractions, right? But I'm not talking about this kind of conductor, right? The conductor of the contractions in the heart is called the sinoatrial or SA node. So SA node, you can see a green arrow on this slide. So SA node is a special region in the right atrium where the electrical signal will firstly send, and then the signal will then travel through the heart and will cause the ventricle to contract. Right. So for the first step, the signal will first send lead to the walls of the atria and make the atria to contract. Now, another name for this SA node is the pacemaker. So you can see from the diagram, the blue arrow represent that the signals from the SA node travel through the wall of the atria and cause them to contract. Now, after the signals travel through the wall of the atria and make the atria to contract, um, finally the signal will reach the beginning of the ventricle, and there is another node called the AV node, and the job of the AV node is to pass the electrical signals to the wall of the ventricle. So actually there is a time gap between the electrical charge or signal travel through the atria wall compared to the time for the signal to travel through the wall of the ventricle. So that's why it explains why the atria contract first, and then after a certain time, then the ventricle will start to contract. In this animation, you can see how the signal is firstly initiated in the right atrium, sorry, and then it traveled through the wall of the atria, and then the signal will reach the AV node, and AV node will pass the signal to the wall of the ventricle and cause the ventricle to contract. So as you can see from the previous slides, the heart can order itself to contract. And the SA plus the AV nodes are the conductors, or the ones that leads the contraction. So it will be in the uniform manner, right? So parts of the muscle in the heart will not just randomly contract. They have to follow the instruction from the SA and AV node. Now, however, SA and AV nodes can be influenced by nerves and hormones. So even though no, it's not the nerve that caused the contraction to happen, but still some nerves can actually influence the speed of the SA and AV node in uh, sending signals to the heart muscles to contract. We will see in the next slide. So the first one, there are two nerves that comes from the medulla, or this is the brain stem. Okay, you can see from the diagram. Part of the brain that has two nerves that can make the SA and the AV nodes to speed up or to slow down the heart rate. So as you can see from here, the purple one from the label there, it says that it causes the inhibition, which means that it will make the heart to beat slower. So this could happen when, for example, you are doing a relaxation, you feel so relaxed, for example, and when you are sleeping, so the heart will beat slower. Now, however, the other one, which is the green one, it will help you, it will make your heart to beat faster. Okay, so for example, when you are doing an exercise and your body start to need more oxygen, it means that the heart needs to pump the blood faster. So yeah, you can see there are two nerves. One will make the SA node and AV node to beat faster, and the other one will make both nodes to make the heart beat slower. Now, the next one that can influence the rate of beating in the SA node is what we call the adrenaline or epinephrine hormone. So you can see that this is the picture of very famous in Guangzhou, the Chimelong. Well, to be honest with you, like not there to take a ride and that roller coaster because it's so deadly for me. Like, so you can say that those people who are dare enough to take the ride, they will feel the adrenaline burst in their body because fear, as you can see in the other diagram on your right, that you can see the amygdala there detects things that are scary or dangerous in the environment. It will trigger the response to fight or flight, which means that to survive for your survival, very important. Now, in order for you to survive in a scary situation or dangerous situation, you need to be smarter, which means that your brain will need more oxygen and your muscle needs to have more oxygen so they can also do more cell respiration and eventually they can move faster or react faster or do something stronger. So that's why as soon as the amygdala detects the scary or dangerous environment, there will be a chain of reactions that includes the hypothalamus and so on and so forth until it reaches the adrenaline gland that is located on the top of your kidney. And this adrenaline gland will produce or secrete the adrenaline hormone or epinephrine, and this epinephrine will be carried by the blood and reach the SA node, and the SA node will then respond to the hormone by speed up the heart rate. And the second one about the uniqueness of the heart muscle, it's like a question. Heart muscle cells work so hard, and you can see from the previous slides. But how do they get the oxygen and nutrients? Now, from the diagram that we have learned so far, the two circuits, the pulmonary and systemic, you cannot see, right, any blood vessels that actually reach out to the muscles of the heart. But yet, of course, to do contraction, they need the oxygen and the nutrients. So, how the muscle cells in the heart receive the oxygen and the nutrient? That's the big question, right? Let's see the next slide. The answer to the question is the left and right coronary artery. So coronary artery are basically two arteries that come out directly from the aorta to bring blood to the fresh blood, oxygenated blood to the muscle cell of the heart. And you can see that actually our heart received the freshest blood because right very close to the aorta at the beginning of the aorta, right? Now, and as you may have learned, later on the arteries will create branches called the capillaries, the smallest blood vessel, and capillaries will reach the every layer of the muscle tissue in the heart to give the oxygen and the nutrients that they need to do the contraction. And later on, the capillaries will combine again together to become the vein. And the vein that are created from the collections of the capillaries in the heart muscle will combine with the inferior vena cava. You can see the purple arrow. So yeah, the vein from the coronary veins will combine with the inferior vena cava and bring the blood back to the right atrium. So those two are the uniqueness of the heart muscle that you have learned from this video. And in the next video on the themes, you will see a video about a disease that is related to the blockage in the coronary artery, or we usually call it coronary artery disease. Okay. So I hope you learn something new and useful. Don't forget to make notes from this video.